You're listening to the mother of all talk shows with me, George Galloway, on WBAI, broadcasting to New York and the tri-state area, all the way from Jakarta, Indonesia.
United States. You are listening to George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. George is a Scotsman, and like me, an Irishman. Enjoy.
Welcome to the mother of all talk shows. I may be a Scotsman, even though the president's an Irishman, but I'm talking to you from Jakarta, capital of the rising eastern giant of Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim country. Hundreds of millions of people living here, bustling like nothing I've ever seen before. A real tiger that's emerging in the east. A long period of dictatorship, of course, now replaced by a new democracy, a fledgling democracy, a bit like the one you've just been hearing about on Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! And what an extraordinary show it was. I caught the last 10 minutes of it or so. This is, of course, the anniversary of the beginning of the Egyptian revolution, and a revolution as yet unfinished, but going in the right direction. I believe you may have a different point of view. 212-209-2900. That's the number to call, the mother of all talk shows. If you want to talk about what's happening in Egypt, you know, some people go their entire lives without experiencing the kind of pictures and sounds that you've just been listening to. There are decades in history when nothing happens, but there are weeks when decades happen. And a year ago, we lived through those weeks when decades happen in Egypt, and therefore across the Arab world. At least 1 in 4 of all Arabs is an Egyptian. Maybe it's 1 in 3, because the population is relatively unknown. We'll be talking, of course, about the State of the Union. What state is the Union in? President Obama certainly seemed upbeat last night in the pictures that I've seen on the television here in Indonesia. Tell me what you thought. Was it all moonshine, or has America turned the corner? Is America back? And what does that mean? I hope it's not back in the world in the way that it's been over these last decades. But of course, for your sake, I hope it's back economically. Mind you, if you didn't want President Obama reelected, you'd have to need your head examined. Because when I see that Newt Gingrich, if he wins, we'll all be moving to Indonesia. In fact, we'll be moving to the farthest flung islands of the Moluccas just to get away from the fallout, which will be very, very considerable indeed. If there is an uglier political figure in the English-speaking world today than Newt Gingrich, I have yet to hear him and don't want to. 212-209-2900. That's the number to call. I'm in Jakarta. You're in New York in the tri-state area, or listening online around the world. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter and on Facebook. Go to George Galloway MP on Facebook and join the nearly 80,000 now who are following me on there, and the balance of around 60,000 on Twitter. Of course, as always, there wouldn't be a show if it wasn't for the fabulous Ife in the studio in New York, who's handling all the calls. Ife, do we have a first call?
I'm sorry, I was actually taking calls. Give me a second.
Excellent. Go ahead.
The first one is Anslam from Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Aslam in Connecticut. Very nice to hear from you. What would you like to say, sir?
Sure. Just a question, I've been puzzled about the issues in Israel-Palestine. My question to you is, who owns the land from a historical point of view? Is it the Jews or the Palestinians? Who owns the land? Who
owned land from a historical point of view isn't of course a guiding principle in international relations. If by historical you mean thousands of years, the land belonged to those who owned the title to it, and the people who owned the title to it are living in refugee camps in the neighboring Arab countries, or are scattered around the world. It's their land. They have title. They have the keys to the houses that their grandfathers built. But they can't live in those houses because European settlers came from around the world and took the land and took their house. Now, if you're asking me, were there always Jews living in Palestine? Of course there were. And I have no problem whatsoever about Jews living in Palestine, and neither did the Palestinians. But that's a different thing from saying the Palestinians have got to be kicked out in order that people can come from America or from Britain or France or Indonesia. I met today a community of Indonesian Jews. They are Indonesian, they are Asian. They have no connection to Palestine whatsoever, historically or otherwise. And yet, they have the legal right to go and live in Palestine tomorrow, whilst a Palestinian whose home and whose land was taken 63 years ago is unable to return to the country, unable to go back to their own house, unable to pick the fruit on their own land, Aslam.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not
brother.
So it's not good.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call. Ife, give me a second one.
Yes, you have Mohammed from Brooklyn, also Yemen.
Okay, Mohammed in Brooklyn via Yemen. Go ahead.
Well, I'd say in Yemen via Brooklyn.
Okay.
How are you, Mr. Galloway? I listen to you every week. I called up a couple of times. We've had talks about, political...
That's right. I remember, Mohammed. Go ahead.
Yeah. But, I'd like to consider myself a Democrat. But,
Can you hear me, New York?
Yeah, I hear you. Do you hear me?
New York, can you hear me?
You having problems?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, hello?
These are the perils of live broadcasting.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Mohammed. I didn't get any of that. Start again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, what I was saying is that, I've been listening to you for a long time. I respect you. And, I find it hard to believe, and I'm wondering why Ron Paul isn't being, is being ignored in the media. And, your support for Obama, because you also support Al-Ahmar regime in Yemen, who are the first cousins of the former President Saleh. I just want to know...
They might be related to Saleh, but the Al-Ahmar family and the Al-Ahmar people have been in the forefront of the battle against the dictatorship for nearly a year and a half, and they've paid a high price in blood for their stand against the dictator, who is now flying to the United States. So I won't have any slander of them, Mohammed. And I don't support President Obama. I only support President Obama against Newt Gingrich, and nobody in their right mind would do otherwise. If you think that it doesn't matter whether the president is Obama or Gingrich, then you're not paying attention. And as for Ron Paul, we've discussed him now many times on this show. I don't know if he is being ignored in the media. He's getting quite a good score in these primaries, but we both know he's not going to be the nominee. He's not going to be the Republican nominee. So it's a red herring. That's my point of view, Mohammed.
All right, Mr. Galloway. It's just that I find it, to say that the situation in Yemen is as simple as saying Saleh versus Al-Ahmar. There are many different facades of the situation in Yemen.
Yeah, of course there are. I'm not saying that only the Al-Ahmar are fighting the dictator. No, of course not.
The southern province of Aden, they've been fighting for longer than anybody else since the inception of the unification of Yemen. They're more progressive and modern and more... I'm sorry to cut you off.
I agree absolutely, Mohammed, that the level of civil society disobedience and then outright uprising and revolt against the dictatorship is very wide and very broad. And what we'll have to have is an election. We'll have to have an election in which a new parliament is elected, a new president is elected, and we'll see what happens. That's what happened in Egypt. That's what happened in Egypt, and the Muslim Brotherhood has won, and the more fundamentalist Islamists were second, and everybody else was an also ran. And we'll see what happens in Yemen. I'm only interested in the people of Yemen choosing their own government. That's all. Al-Ahmar is a friend of mine, a dear friend and brother of mine. If he runs for the presidency, I hope he wins. But I'm interested only in that the Yemen people choose.
Well, I agree with you on that, but I think in the more progressive circles in Yemen, the more in academia, you find that the Yemenis in America and in Yemen view Al-Ahmar as more of the same thing, and that
of course, that might very well be true. But the people who will choose are not the Yemeni people in America. Neither are they the progressives or the intellectuals or however you wish to describe them. The people who will choose the new leadership in Yemen are the masses of Yemen.
So do you
and
think
I never found it productive, Mohammed, to second guess the masses.
Do you think now when you look at the broader spectrum of the Middle East, you have the Brotherhood, they're taking most of the elections. Do you think that this is a reemergence of kind of like an Islamic state rather than each individualized country state? Since that's a complex question, I'll listen to off air.
No, I know. It's a good question, very good question. I believe in the unity of the Arab world, from the Atlantic to the Gulf, from Marrakesh to Bahrain. I want to see the Arabs united. Anything which unites the Arabs will have my support. I want to see more unity in the Muslim world, part of which I'm sitting in now. 300 million Indonesians I'm sitting amongst, and hardly anybody in Britain or America knows anything about the country or its politics here. So anything which tends to bring unity amongst the Muslims will have my support. I support unity of Europe. I support unity of Africa. I support unity everywhere in the world. I want closer and closer union of the peoples of the world. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Specific states will continue to have their own characteristics. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is not the same as the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, is not the same as the Muslim Brotherhood in Libya. None of them are like the Taliban in Afghanistan. None of them are like bin Laden in the Tora Bora, and so on. So these are all country-specific. None of them are homogenic. None of them are monolithic. And the people will make their decisions. And they have done so in Egypt. Maybe you wouldn't have voted for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Personally, I would have. But either way, the masses voted for them. And that was the crucial point. And if the masses voted for them, they must be allowed to rule without interference, without subversion, without corrupting the process from outside. That's all I'm saying, Mohammed. Thanks for the call. Great call. Ife, give me number 3.
Yes, you have Tony from Queens.
Tony in Queens, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. George, only 40% voted for the Muslim people.
Yes, and 23%
only 40%,
voted
George. The public did not go to vote for the military in Mubarak is still in power because his military is what rules that country. And Obama does the same thing. He's sent these suicide people to kill what they call pirates. Those people are not pirates. And he keeps talking about bin Laden. He keeps talking about how he fixed it all by killing bin Laden. That has nothing to do with reality. The people that are the true people are not religiously connected. It's the ignorant people, as you said, the Jews that think they need to live in Palestine, the Jews that need to have their religious money paying the politicians, AIPAC, so that they're just as bad as all the people behind Gingrich. Gingrich is allowing the Catholics. He's such a phony Catholic. He is so unbelievable, but he's not dangerous. I think the other guy is dangerous, the one with all the money, the one they're really going to push. Whether it is going to be the one from the Mormon church, they're going to pick a millionaire, billionaire, so that nothing's really going to change because Obama likes war. He's like very military. Everything he talks about is how he kills this and that. And all his drones. Did you hear the program of the American drone? We're developing more drones of every size than any other country. And that's how we're killing people.
Well, I'm of course aware of the development of U.S. military drone production. I'm aware of the fact that you're making more drones than all the other countries in the world put together. I'm aware of the fact that your military budget is greater than the military budgets of all the other countries in the world. I'm aware of all of that. I'm aware of President Obama's mistakes and crimes, and I've never hid them from anybody. But I disagree with a considerable amount of what you said. We can't go calling people, Tony, we can't go calling people who don't vote the way that we would wish them to vote ignorant, because that's just elitist and completely unacceptable. Your numbers are wrong. 40% of the people who voted in the Egyptian election, which was 70%, which was a lot more than votes for the American presidency and a lot more than votes for the British Parliament. 70% turnout, 40% of those who voted for the Muslim Brotherhood, and 26% voted for the Salafist Front, which is more Islamic than the Muslim Brotherhood. So that leaves the great majority, more than 65% of the Egyptian Parliament has the support, or rather was comprised of the two main Islamic forces. And there are other Islamic forces who also made it into the Parliament. So it was an overwhelming victory for the Islamic forces. And that's the choice of the Egyptian people. And we have to respect that. You would never accept that people around the world have a right to say when the United States elects a political leader that it was the ignorant people, the religious people who elected them. Therefore, somehow we won't recognize or won't accept the legitimacy of the leadership of the United States. That just cannot be countenanced. The left, and I am a man of the left, was completely annihilated in the Egyptian election. And it's time for a little humility on that. The Arab nationalists, and I count myself as a supporter of Arab nationalism, was virtually completely annihilated in the Egyptian elections. And we need some humility about that. Now, as to these kidnappers in Somalia, they are pirates. If you capture 2 aid workers and threaten to cut their throats unless you're paid a very large sum of money, you're a pirate. And one of them was a United States citizen. The United States has the right, in a lawless country with no government and no state, like Somalia, however it reached that point, we could have a long debate about that. I happen to know the region very well. However it reached that point, it has no state, no government, no law. And in those circumstances, the United States government has every right to rescue its own citizens and kill the people who are holding them, who are threatening to cut their throats unless they get a large sum of money. That's a definition of piracy. Don't you think, Tony?
Well, maybe so, George, but I still think the religious people in these countries are not really Islamic. They're very connected to military.
No,
they're military.
How could 65%?
No, they didn't say that. On CNN, they said that it was only, not all the people went out to vote, only the Muslims went out.
I gave you the exact number. 70% of the people.
You did.
70% of the people voted. That's a huge percentage.
Well,
Egypt's population is almost 100 million people.
A lot of people.
If 70% of the people voted, that's an enormous mandate. And they voted for the 2 main Islamic parties, and we have to accept that. We can't go calling them ignorant. We can't go calling them stupid. This was their decision. And that's what democracy means. That's what the revolution was for. And we just have to live with the fact that that's the choice of the Egyptian people. Now, you've reminded me of a point that you made that I didn't deal with. And it was on the subject of religiosity in Israel. I happen to know Israel very well. And I can tell you that there are few countries in the world less religious than Israel. The vast majority of Israelis have nothing to do with religion. The occupation of Palestine is a nationalist occupation. The people that live in Jerusalem are religious, yes, and many of those are against the nationalism which Zionism represents. Zionism has nothing to do with religion. The founders of Zionism were atheists. Herzl was an atheist. Weizmann was an atheist. All these great figures in the foundation of the Zionist movement and then the foundation of Israel itself were atheists. They only use the Bible, the Old Testament, if they get into a corner in an argument about the land, which is what it's really about, in order to claim that God is an estate agent, a real estater, who gave them this land. This is balderdash. I told you, an Indonesian Jew, if you saw them, you'd say that person is an Indonesian, has the right to go to Palestine tomorrow and to live in a Palestinian's house, and that Palestinian will go on living in a refugee camp. That's the madness of Zionism, but it has nothing to do with Judaism. Tony, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Do we have a fourth call?
Yes, you do. You have Henry from Brooklyn.
Yes, this is Henry from Brooklyn. I spoke to you in December and about the bank. What happened is I heard someone in another station talking about the bank, the People National Bank of the World.
Yes.
I think they're putting it together, but you had disputed me about the party. We still need time. We have time. We have until August to create our own party. We need two separate parties, which are going to run from the same branch, because this system has to be manipulated. And the third part of my question is, I need a bunch of lawyers, whether they retire or active or what. I want to reopen. I don't know this man from Adams, but looking at this case, Mr. Murdoch, I want to open this case. I want to serve the government some papers, and we want to open this case as the people challenging the American government. And this needs to be done.
Well, I wish you all the best, and I'm sure there are lawyers listening that might be able to help you, Henry. I myself won a big victory against Mr. Murdoch in the High Court in London this very week, whilst I've been in Indonesia. And today or tomorrow they will make a groveling apology to me in the court and pay me a substantial sum of money in damages and in costs. So I'm well up for a fight with Mr. Murdoch. But you're just wrong, if you don't mind me saying so, in thinking that you can run for the presidency of the United States between now and November. It's just wrong. There is no way. There is no way that any challenge to either Obama or Gingrich or Romney could take place, because the numbers of people that need to be involved to run an election campaign in the whole of the United States, the amount of money that needs to be raised in order to fight an election campaign, it's simply not true that it can be done between now and November. And any votes that you did get would help Gingrich or would help Romney and not help the people that you want to help. So if you're really going to do this, Henry, this is not the time to do it. I don't know when the time to do it is, but I know when the time not to do it is, and that time is now. This is the mother of all talk shows with me, George Galloway, on WBAI.
This is the President of the United States. Yes, I promised you change you could believe in. Well, here it is, George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows.
That's me, and that's my point of view on the American elections, but I want to hear yours. 212-209-2900 is the number to call. We're talking about the anniversary of the revolution in Egypt. We're talking about the presidential campaign, which is well underway. We're talking about Gingrich and the threat that he represents. I've never seen a more malignant political individual in my life than Newt Gingrich. I never thought I'd warm to Mitt Romney, but I certainly hope he beats Newt Gingrich, because if Gingrich ever became president of the United States, it would be run for the hills time. And we're talking about the State of the Union. What state is the Union in? 212-209-2900. Aoife, do we have a fifth call?
Yes, you have Carl from Brooklyn.
Carl in Brooklyn, welcome to the show.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Galloway.
Good morning, sir.
I talked to you last week about the Ron Paul issue. I did some research on it, and I'm clear in my judgment now that the Republican Party and the other parties are so wicked in their design of trying. They're talking about killing the Iranian scientists, and that's not even. They're glorifying terrorism.
Yes, you're right. It would be a crime in any other country.
Right.
If I stood up live on television and called for someone to be murdered, and they were then murdered, I would be on trial.
Right.
For incitement to murder. But that's exactly what these Republican presidential candidates did.
Yes, they're promoting the eradication of Iranian scientists. Another thing, I'm thinking, who is the United States and NATO to tell who can have nuclear technology?
Quite.
They're just like.
In fact, I don't know if you know this, Carl, but when the Shah, the tyrant dictator of Iran before the revolution, when he was in power, the United States was trying desperately to persuade him to begin a nuclear energy industry. Westinghouse were forever in Tehran trying to sell nuclear energy technology to Iran. So they're not against Iran having nuclear technology. They're only against this Iran. An Iran which is governed by people who don't follow orders from the United States. That's the truth of the matter.
And Israel.
And Israel, yes, exactly.
Right, because Israel is the police of the Middle East. They're the United States and NATO's little arm.
Well, they were, but the revolution in the Arab world is changing everything, Carl. In the desert, it only takes a few drops of rain to transform the landscape, and that's what's happening now. It's being transformed in front of your eyes.
Yeah, well, the American
landscape. Thanks for the call. Great call. Let's go to the 6th, Ife.
Sure. You have Richard from the Bronx.
Richard in the Bronx, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello, thank you very much for taking my
You're
call.
welcome. Go ahead.
Well, I want to take the opportunity to say I agree with most of what you say, and I really value your work for social justice. But I have been beguiled by your assertion of the need to vote for Obama, which predates Newt Gingrich's rise even in the primary.
Yeah, I'd vote for Obama against any Republican.
Yeah, and it's kind of irked me to hear that for many months when, there is a Green Party, for example, in the United States. There are people that have been working not from now to the election to create a broad base of support. And I just think if progressive people like you could mention those efforts a little more often, we would ultimately get to the point where you don't think we have to choose between the lesser of two evils.
Yes,
so I'll listen to your response offline. Thank you.
No, it's a very fair point, Richard. And of course, we rely on you to talk about the Green Party and other political developments. You're closer to that than me. All I say is this. If the choice was between Tweedledum and Tweedledee, if it was really between two cheeks of the same backside, if it didn't matter whether candidate Obama or candidate of the Republican Party won, then I would think there's every case for voting Green or voting for someone else. But no one can tell me that that's true now. No one can tell me that there will be no difference whether Obama or Gingrich is elected President of the United States. I mean, a blind man could see the difference between these two options. That doesn't mean I'm saying Obama's good. Still less that I'm saying he's great. I'm saying that Gingrich would be a catastrophe for the world, be a catastrophe for America and a catastrophe for the world. And therefore, in that choice, I have to encourage people to vote for Obama. I wish that was not the choice. Believe me, I wish that there was a progressive, vibrant, funded, and mobilized and organized and educated third party in the United States. And maybe there will be, and maybe there needs to be. Almost certainly there needs to be. But it's not going to be built between now and November, and I'm mindful of Ralph Nader and his run for the presidency, which gave us George W. Bush. That was the effect of Nader's votes in Florida, if I'm not wrong. The result was to hand the state to George W. Bush and therefore the presidency to George W. Bush. So there's no point in putting up a third candidate if the only outcome of that is that you help the worst of the two candidates into power. That's all I'm saying. Richard, thanks for the call. You're a gentleman. Ife, give me a seventh, please.
Yes, you have Tony, another Tony from Yonkers.
Tony in Yonkers, great to hear from you. Go ahead.
Thank you, George. George, I want to get your insight about something that I read last night on the media. I read that Iran recently agreed to trade their oil with India and China in war. How do you think this will accelerate the attack against Iran, considering that this was one of the factors that accelerate the attack against Iraq and Saddam Hussein? That's my question.
Well, it's a very good point, and that is indeed one of the factors, not the main one, not even one of the few main ones, but it is one of the factors that led to the war against Iraq, because Iraq was seeking to sell its oil for euros and trying to break out of the stranglehold of the U.S. dollar. And if you're right, and I must say I'm unaware of that Iran is going to trade with India and China in gold, if you'll forgive me saying so, I very much doubt that could be done, then definitely that's a further exacerbating factor in the standoff with Iran. But again, it will not be the main one or even one of the few main ones. The real reason that the United States wanted to break Iraq was to show who's boss, to terrify the world with American power as a preparation for the new American century, which these zealots, these neocon maniacs who had taken control of America were planning, and indeed told us so when they developed and conceptualized their project for the new American century. And the same goes now. They want to terrify the world, and especially China, with American power. They want to show who's boss. But they are making a very, very profound mistake. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not a broken-backed country, crippled by more than a decade of sanctions, riven by deep dissension of an ethnic and confessional nature like Iraq was. Iran is a powerful country, a young country, a hugely populous country, 3 times the population of Iraq or more, and Iran has its own military strength. I'm not in a position to go into details, but I am in a position to say this. If Israel or America makes a military attack against Iran, it will be the biggest mistake in history. Believe me, the consequences will be terrible and everywhere. Tony, thanks for the call. Let's take number 8, Ife.
Yes, you have Joseph from Newark, New Jersey.
Joseph in Newark, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mr. Galloway. This is my
Good morning, sir.
calling. Yes, I have a question about America going to Libya, Egypt, freeing people, but I don't hear nobody talking about Darfur. And when Obama was running for president, he went to Africa, and he went to visit Hawaii a couple of times. But do you think he's going to visit Africa as president?
I don't think he's going to visit Africa now as a president. I did actually see the school that he attended in Jakarta yesterday. It's not far from where I'm speaking to you now, actually, just less than a mile away from here. President Obama is obviously a person of quite exotic background for a president of the United States, given his race, given the history of his family and so on. I think he knows the world better than any president that the United States has ever had. Not that it's done us much good, because his approach to the world has been far too similar to the approach to the world made by the neocons that came before him. The situation in Sudan is very complex. First of all, Sudan has been split into 2. And Israel and America are now effectively running what used to be the south of Sudan and is now a separate state of South Sudan. People have tried to break up Sudan for a very long time because it is a sleeping giant. It sits on top of an ocean of oil and gas. And worse than that, it's already contracted to sell it all to China. So that's a double crime. It's a crime for an Islamic country to have oil and not be under control by the West and by the oil companies and by the governments of the United States and its allies. But it's a double crime when you're actually selling that oil to China, which is the real target of the projection of American power and the attempt to intimidate the world with that power, the better to command the 21st century in the way that the United States commanded most of the 20th century. So we ought to be careful when we hear people emphasizing problems inside Sudan. We ought to know that the real reason they're talking about them, if they're amongst the elite, if they're amongst the powerful in the United States, is because they want to weaken what is potentially a rich and powerful Arab country. It's the mother of all talk shows, coming from Jakarta, Indonesia, with me, George Galloway, on WBAI.
Fighting the golden flakes of change with the milk of human kindness. This is the mother of all talk shows, and George Galloway.
Mr. President, that made no sense whatsoever.
I know. That's
Indeed.
why I said it.
That made no sense whatsoever, like so much of what President Obama's had to say in the course of the last 4 years. Yet I am still adamant that we're going to have to bite the bullet, hold the nose, and re-elect Barack Obama. We have to stop the lunatics taking control of the asylum again. But I want your point of view on that. 212-209-2900. That's the number to call. Ife's handling the calls in New York. And without her, we wouldn't have a show. Ife, give me a ninth, please.
You have Mark from Harlem.
Mark in Harlem, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mr. Galloway, how are you?
Very well, sir. Thanks for the call.
All right, love your show, love your dialogue.
Thank you, friend.
If I may, can we back up into Somalia for a minute?
Yes.
The question I have is, we here in the Western world, all we hear about Somalia is that these chocolate black men are pirates. But can you kind of just touch, I know it may be a long dialogue, but can you give us a little bit of reasoning why these men have picked up arms and said, literally, if you come into our waters, we're going to shoot you? Or please correct me if I'm wrong about who owns the waters that United States, Great Britain, and others are illegally chartering in and fishing out of. I'll let you go.
Well, it's a very powerful point that you make. The long version of the answer can be found on YouTube in a speech I gave in the British Parliament on the subject of Somalia. Just type in George Galloway plus Somalia on the search engine in YouTube, and you'll find that speech, and you'll read a lot of interesting comments that are appended to it. The short version, which is necessary on a 1-hour radio show, is this: that Somalia has no government. It has no state. It has no army, no navy, no air force. It's not got a coast guard. It's not in control of its coastline. And pirates are plying their trade, as pirates have for millennia, and seizing shipping and demanding ransom in exchange for it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not, myself, obsessed by pirates. I recall the great book by St. Augustine, City of God, which begins with an encounter between the so-called Alexander the Great and a pirate ship, ordering the pirate ship to halt. Alexander the Great demands of the pirate captain, "How dare you terrorize these waters as a thief?" And the pirate captain answers, "How dare you terrorize the whole world? You, with your great navy, who can call yourself an emperor and can call other men as you please." And written millennia ago, this book and that statement sums up the world we have today. There are little pirates and there are big pirates. I'm in no doubt who the big pirates are, and they don't have chocolate-colored skin, they're not black men, and they don't live in Somalia. The big pirates live elsewhere, and they're overwhelmingly white, and they're overwhelmingly Western. But that doesn't mean the small pirate is not a pirate. And God forbid, if one of our relatives was kidnapped by these people and threatened with a horrible death unless we sold our house and raised the money in order to free them, we would regard that as piracy. So just because there is a bigger wrong doesn't make the smaller wrong right. That's the point I was making earlier in relation to Somalia. Now, there are many countries acting on the crisis in Somalia, and most of them are making the crisis worse. The United States has been intervening in Somalia for what? When was Black Hawk down? More than 20 years ago. And nothing got better for all the efforts of the United States, all the subversion, all the picking of winners and killing of losers. Nothing got better. Ethiopia was used to invade and occupy Somalia. It failed. They're now patrolling the Somali coastline. That will fail to solve the problem. A political settlement which accepts that Somalia is an Islamic country and has the right to elect an Islamic government if it wishes and not be subverted, invaded, and occupied as a result, will have to be the way forward in Somalia, as indeed in other places. Mark in Harlem, thanks for the call. Ife, do we have a 10th?
Yes, you do. You have Hanifa from Brooklyn.
Excellent. Hanifa, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Malloy.
Alaikum salam to you.
It's an honor to speak to you, but don't let it go to your head. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
I love you, humble. I just want to make a few points and then tell me what you think. Your Irish friend last night made a wonderful speech, I thought, and people may criticize it, but I think, if you're a little bug and you're walking on a Persian rug, you only see the color that you're on. If you get a little higher, you see the pattern, and the Lord sees the pattern of it all. War is a strategy. You have to give Obama credit. You can't just take things in the surface way. You've got to look deeper. Give him a chance. That's all I can say. As far as the Jews go, I'm a Muslim. I love my Jewish brothers and sisters that keep that covenant with Yahweh, but the thing is, in the book of Revelations, it says there will be those who call themselves Jews, and they're not. They're from the synagogue of Satan. So we have to understand that there are pretenders in every religion. And if Farrakhan had said that, he wouldn't have never gotten in trouble. As far as Iran goes, I think Iran, if they look at Germany, eventually they'll realize, hey, nuclear is not the way to go, especially when you have earthquakes like they had in Qom. Forget about that stuff. They can do other things. In the meantime, I want to just go quickly. I'm a woman. I want to go to Tunisia. There were women who were dressed in burqas who were supposed to go to the university there, and they were shut out. So they came back with their men and sort of stormed the university, and the teacher said they wouldn't teach them because they can't look in their eye. Now, what is the problem? You ever have a teacher that's blind? I have, and I got very good teaching, and the teacher did not look in my eye. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'll tell you what, Hanifa,
please, let me just say this. In the case of women, there has to be, in democracy, a place for all types. I would wear a burqa myself, except I'm in Brooklyn, and I can't communicate with people that wouldn't understand. I'm not ready for that. They're not ready for me to be in a burqa. And as far as, the White House, if you have comments, you can call 202-456-1111, and you can call the comment line, and you can just ask information for that, and they'll put you through. And the last thing is I got an Irish blessing for you that I know that Obama would have given you, and it says, may the hinges of our friendship never grow rusty. And I love you.
Thank
and
you.
What do you think?
What a wonderful call, Hanifa. I'm really touched by that, and I won't let it go to my head. I agreed with much of what you said. Not all, but much of what you said. I think that Obama's speech last night was extremely powerful. I think you could tell that from the look on the Boner's face behind him. He knew that the economic pickup, which seems, I stress seems, to be beginning in the United States, and the lurch to extremism and fanaticism on the part of the Republican Party base in these primaries makes it much more likely that Obama will be elected for a second term. And I hope that he is elected for a second term, if only because of who's up against him. And on the subject of, you call them burqas, the proper word is the niqab, which is covering the mouth and the lower part of the nose of the women in question. What's often said by Islamophobic bigots is that they don't want to be taught by someone or to teach someone or to deal with someone whose lips they can't see moving. And sometimes you're right. They say that they want to see the whites of someone's eyes before they can deal with them. All of which portends no future for radio, because I'm speaking to you from Jakarta, Indonesia, and none of you can see my eyes, and none of you can see my lips moving, and none of you can see me sitting in my pajamas, which is currently what I'm doing, because it's very much later here than it is in New York. But you can still communicate with me. You're talking with me, and I'm talking with you, and we're both making sense, I hope. So the idea that you have to see someone's lips move before you can converse with them is simply preposterous. Ife, give me the 11th call, please.
Yes, you have John from Inglewood, New Jersey.
John in New Jersey, welcome.
George.
Hi.
My dad hails from Cumberslang. My mom hails from
just outside Glasgow. I know it well.
I got a couple of things to say.
Yeah.
First thing is a question. Let me just ask the question, say my other opinions, and then say sayonara. First question, or the question, what is the difference between a Somalian pirate and a country that threatens another country to bomb them back to the Stone Age if they don't do what they're told? That's my question.
It's an excellent point, John.
Okay. The other thing is,
that's why I said,
just let me say my two things. Two more things, that's all. Barack Obama's speech last night was more of the same. The only thing I gleaned from it is that we are going to continue full force to poison the water and the land and the air, beyond belief. Every time I hear the word clean, it's bordering on an outright lie. Clean coal, this does not exist. Clean oil, this does not exist. Clean gas, it doesn't exist. And the last one is tens of thousands of American jobs. Whoa. That's all I have to say, sir. You have a good day.
Well, you said it very well, and I can't go into, I don't have to detail on all the points that you made, and I agree that much of what President Obama had to say makes my blood run cold, especially on foreign affairs. But the presidency, of course, is dealing with domestic as well as foreign affairs, and we have to weigh up President Obama against the only other candidate who can win. And I've said my piece on that, and I stand by it. President Obama will be less bad than. He will be the least worst of the only two candidates that can win the presidency. And I'm a practical political man, and I have to deal in the practicality. And the practicality is that candidate A or candidate B will be elected. How much worse is candidate B than candidate A? Considerable, especially if the nominee is Gingrich. That's my point. Anyway, Aoife, give me the 12th.
Yes, you have Ayub from Manhattan.
Ayub, welcome to the show, my friend.
Good morning, George. How are you?
Very well, by the grace of God. Thank you very much.
May Allah protect you. My point is here. I don't read much from the European news, and I don't know what is their reaction. But I'm stunned by the fact that these Republican candidates keep presenting Europe as what, a third world continent or country, when they say Obama wanted to transform America into a socialist European kind of. And I'm saying to myself, where are the European politicians? I'm not talking about Galloway, no. I'm talking about Cameron, about Sarkozy, about other political parties. What is their reaction?
Or Merkel of Germany.
Or Merkel.
I never understood that. It's like the word liberal. The word liberal is used as a swear word in America, and most people in the world can't quite understand that. And the idea that it's bad to be a European country belies the experience of any American who's ever been in Europe. Europe is a fine place. Europe has many things which are much better than the United States. It would be a good thing for you if you were more European, not less. But you're America, and you'll have your own authentic model, and at least I hope you will have your own authentic model. The idea that something can be trashed by describing it as European is absolutely beyond comprehension for the vast majority of Europeans and the vast majority of Americans who have ever been in Europe. Thanks very much for the call, Ayub. This is the mother of all talk shows with me, George Galloway, coming to you from Jakarta, Indonesia.
It's George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows, guaranteed to destroy all weapons of mass deception.
That's me, and that's Ife in the studio in New York, handling all of this, keeping all these balls in the air. It's quite difficult because the quality of the phone line's not that great. I hope you're enjoying the show. 212-209-2900. That's the number to call. Ife, do we have a 13th?
Yes, you have Tom from Manhattan as well.
Tom in Manhattan, welcome.
Hi, George.
Hi.
You have said many times, and you just said it several times this morning, that as much as you disagree with Obama, as bad as he is, we really have no choice but to vote for him because the Republican candidates are so bad, so over the edge. Yeah. But, that assumes that a president of the United States or a president of any other bourgeois country is pretty independent and makes policies. I believe that Marx said that government is nothing more than a committee of the ruling class. Now we know who supports Obama. Wall Street. You admitted that yourself, and he takes his orders from Wall Street. Now, who would be supporting Gingrich or Romney? Wall Street. So they're going to take their orders from Wall Street. Now,
well, but Tom, let me interrupt you for a minute. You're an intelligent man. I've only got two words to say. George Bush. Did George Bush, or did he not, make a difference by being president? Would President Al Gore have done exactly the same things that President George Bush did? Do you really believe that, Tom?
Well, we don't know exactly what Al Gore would have done. That's just speculation.
But I'm asking you to speculate. I'm asking you to make an intelligent speculation.
Okay, I'll make would have Al Gore gone into Iraq and Afghanistan?
That's what I'm asking you.
We don't know that. We know that Obama continued that policy.
No, he didn't. Obama's withdrawn from Iraq, and he's in the process of withdrawing from Afghanistan. Too slow, too late, too much blood, too much treasure. But you can't say that Obama's policy towards Iraq and Afghanistan is exactly the same as George Bush's. Otherwise, the United States would still have several 100,000 soldiers in Iraq and would not be bringing the soldiers back from Afghanistan, albeit too slowly. I know enough about Marx to know that the essence of what you say is true, Tom, that the ruling class is the ruling class. That's why it's called the ruling class. But you can't say that the character of the president makes no difference. You can't say that Barry Goldwater, if he'd been elected in 1964, would have been the same as Lyndon Johnson. You can't. the world probably wouldn't exist today if Barry Goldwater had been the president. You can't say that Jack Kennedy, presiding over the Cuban Missile Crisis, would have been exactly the same as Richard Nixon presiding over it. That doesn't make sense, Tom, and you sound like a guy that makes sense.
We lost Tom.
We lost Tom?
Yeah.
Are we running out of time, Ife?
Yeah, the music's been playing for a couple of minutes. I don't know if you can hear it.
I can hear it now. It's been marvelous, for me at least. If it was for you, come back and see me, or at least listen to me next week at the same time, in the same place, when I'll still be in the Far East, but this time in Kuala Lumpur. This is George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows.